I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then I start a war.
Willie Mandrell again with my partner Lior, and we're going to talk a little bit about some other experiences that we had. Another experience that we had in the same building. If you watched episode 1, we were talking about we invest in a lot of 3 families here in Boston, and last episode was about E1. This episode is about E2. It wasn't as bad of a situation, but unique in the sense that it was basically just a clubhouse, basically just a party house. We basically had a whole bunch of kids running around. But again, I'll let Lior kind of start off, and then, he is the one who, helps us acquire these properties, these shitholes, and then passes them on to me. I'm kidding. It wasn't a shithole. It's a great piece of property, but he's the one that kind of, if shit rolls downhill, I would be, next in line to take on the shit that he buys. So,
I did deal with him for a fair while. So this is the same building we bought. Again, real quick summary. It was a 3-family we bought that was pretty distressed at the time. It needed a lot of work. It was fully occupied, so it came with tenants that were of not the highest quality. Again, I think we mentioned this the last episode. We found out later that we bought from one of the bigger slumlords around the city. That second unit over there was tough because, up front, the tenants weren't awful, right? They weren't really doing anything too horrible. The worst thing they were doing is it was a mother and a couple kids, and the kids would always be like bumping music really, really loud. And once in a while, I'd get like calls about, hey, like, can you tell them to turn it down, that kind of thing. But it wasn't like they were being egregious, right? They weren't doing anything horrible. But the one thing we noticed as time progressed and as, we were operating the building was, there was these 2 kids who were maybe like 15 years old, 14 years old, something like that. And we noticed that they would always have like a bunch of kids over. And we found a couple of weed joints in the basement. We had a few tenants tell us that they saw the kids smoking weed in the basement, next to the furnaces, which kind of got me a little worried. But we kind of just saw the small pattern of a lot of kids at that house over and over again, which for a while wasn't horrible.
Yeah. So, it wasn't as bad. It's just the problem is they, with that type of activity brings a whole bunch of other things, right? So, we had the young kids, 15 years old. They had, all their motorcycles, all their little mopeds. They would bring with them, and there was probably, at one point I was over there during the middle of the summer. And this is, summer in Boston gets kind of crazy. You can always tell when, we come out of the springtime and snow melts, and you can always, or it wasn't even summer, springtime, right? As soon as April hits, and we get a warm day, it just gets crazy. And I go over there, and there's probably about 10 or 12 kids just hanging off the side of the porches, hanging off the house, sitting on the front of the porches. And with that brings the police. It brings tenant complaints. It brings everything else. They would just, it was basically just a clubhouse party, a party house. And one of the reasons that was because what we didn't realize when we bought the building was that their mother didn't even live there. The parent or the Section 8 voucher holder wasn't even there. She was actually overseas, didn't have a cell phone, didn't use email. And Lior somehow, I don't know how you figured this out, but the only way to get in contact her was like Facebook Messenger. It's like Facebook Messenger was the only contact that we had with this woman. So we couldn't control her kids and the 9 other, freaking Smurfs that they brought with them, because the only thing that we could, communicate with this woman was Facebook Messenger. And I don't even know if she was in the same time zone. Was she, how did you even find her?
I honestly don't even remember. I think like one of her kids connected me with her on Facebook Messenger, because I told him I kept trying to call his mom. Yeah, that's what it was. I kept trying to call him, and it would obviously not get picked up. He's like, why don't you try and message her on Facebook? So I was like, okay. I mean, I've never really done that with a tenant before, but all right, we'll try that out. And that was the only way she would communicate with me was through Messenger, which was so annoying.
Yeah. So, I mean, through... and this was, a situation where the tenant was probably paying 50% of what the market value of the rent was. So, I mean, we couldn't get rent increases. We couldn't, coordinate with the Section 8 voucher rep or anything like that. It was just a very difficult to maneuver. The kids are constantly taking the smoke detectors, off of the walls while they're smoking. So that, I mean, there's a health code or, violation right there, a building code violation as well. They're taking the smoke detectors off of the smoke detector, not only in their unit, but also in the common areas. So everyone else in the building is not protected because of, this activity. They're smoking in the basement. It's just a whole bunch of things, again, leaving the front door open. Difficult situation. But I would say one of the things that I took away from that, and one of the lessons that I've learned is, we could have, again, recognized that activity right up front, had we been, paying a little bit more attention. I think, again, we're numbers driven people. We looked at the building and we basically said, gentlemen selling us a building at 610,000 when everything else in the neighborhood is going for 750. And we looked at that and we were like, dude, all we got to do is clean it up a little bit. But if we looked outside of just the, how do I say this, cosmetic rehab that we had to do, I think that was all that we were looking at, and we didn't look at the trouble that the occupants or potential, or current occupants would have brought us. So that was a difficult thing in just terms of, we could have stepped back and did a little bit more. One of the things that I used to do all the time when I was, first getting into the business, and maybe I was a little bit more lazy at this point, was, take a drive by the building in the middle of the night. Take a drive by the building and during different times of day, see what it's like on the weekends. We probably visited, the building once and then said, yeah, let's go ahead and do it. So I'll let you kind of add your thoughts. So.
Yeah, I would say it's kind of a similar lesson for me as the first unit with this, because this was another instance where this was one of our newer projects where we had to deal with these kinds of issues. And we kind of let it ride out a little too long, right? It was probably about 18 months before we really started pressing the hammer on her.
Right.
There was a few things going back and forth. We were trying to talk with her Section 8 voucher representative, and we were hoping to be able to kind of resolve it a little bit more accordingly. But at the end of the day, this was just one of those things that we learned, that you kind of got to, as soon as you recognize an issue, you got to step 100% on that pedal, because if you're not going to press on it, again, we're not dealing with A-class tenants, A-class properties. These tenants, they will just keep doing what it is that they're doing, right? They're not just going to stop because they feel bad or have a guilty conscience or something like that, right? So you just, once you recognize an issue, you just got to slam it down very, very quickly. You can't really be playing games with these sorts of tenants.
Yeah, I think that one of the hardest part about taking over a new building is just changing the culture. And I think that's like anything, right? I mean, you take over a new company, or if as a CEO, coming in and changing the culture, right? I mean, if people are used to doing or operating in one fashion or one way, same time that they've been there, you coming in as a new landlord, it's going to take some time to kind of change that over. We're a lot more aggressive with the change now than we used to be, but that culture shift does need to take it does take some time to make that culture shift, should I say? But that's E2. Stick with us. I'm excited to share a little story with you about E3. E3 is a very interesting character. Me and Leora both had some experiences with the tenant E3. We're staying in the same building for the next episode, so please stay with us, and we'll see you on the other side.
I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.